All right, let's do something fun. We're going to jump in a time machine and head way back to the 1700s to get a real feel for what daily life was like in the 13 American colonies. Let's get into it.
Seriously, think about that for a second. No phone to scroll through, no Wi-Fi, no ordering a pizza when you're hungry. So, what on earth did people actually do all day? That question is going to take us into a world that is so different from ours.
And yeah, this really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? Our world runs on instant everything. Their world? It ran on pure, unfiltered elbow grease. Your survival literally depended on physical work, on cooking over a pretty dangerous open fire, and wearing clothes that you or someone in your family made by hand. It was a completely hands-on life.
Okay, but here's the thing. There wasn't just one colonial experience, not at all. The reality of your day-to-day life depended hugely on where you lived. In a very real way, geography was destiny. Let's see how this played out across the three main regions. Wow, okay, this table tells such a clear story. You can literally see three different worlds developing. Up in New England, you had these cold winters and rocky soils, so people turned to the sea. Fishing and building ships became huge, and life was centered in these tight-knit little towns. Then you have the middle colonies, kind of the sweet spot. The soil was fertile, so they grew tons of grain, earning them the nickname the breadbasket, and that's where you started to see big cities pop up. And way down south, the warm climate and long growing season created a whole different world of massive plantations for cash crops like tobacco and rice. This meant families often lived really isolated, far apart from their neighbors. And these weren't just small differences, they were the seeds of the huge economic and social divides that would shape America's future.
So, no matter which region you were in, one thing was pretty much universal. The family was the absolute core of everything. Your home wasn't the place you went to relax after work. The home was the workplace. It was the farm, the factory, the whole shebang. And inside that family business, the roles were crystal clear. Men were generally responsible for the outdoor work, farming the land, or maybe practicing a trade like being a blacksmith. They were also the public face of the family in community matters. Women, meanwhile, ran the entire domestic world. And listen, this was not just a little cooking and cleaning. It was a massive full-time job that included making clothes from scratch, preserving all the food for winter, making soap and candles, and raising the next generation of workers. And what about the kids? Well, childhood as we think of it today, it didn't really exist. From a very young age, kids were essential workers. Boys would be out in the fields with their fathers or sent off to learn a trade as an apprentice. Girls would be right there with their mothers, learning all those crucial household skills. Formal school was a luxury that many just didn't have. But, they were still kids. They definitely still found time for simple fun, playing games like marbles, tag, and hopscotch.
Just think about the basics. Making a meal meant cooking for hours over a smoky, hazardous open hearth. And clothes? Forget fast fashion. Everything was practical and durable, made by hand from wool or linen. And get this fact at the bottom, most people own just 2 or 3 outfits, total.
So, we've seen how the family unit operated. Now let's kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture. How did the colonial economy actually work? How did people earn a living?
This chart gives us a fantastic snapshot. Look at that huge slice. The overwhelming majority of colonists were farmers. Their lives revolved around working the land. But you also had a really vital group of skilled artisans, people like blacksmiths making essential tools, or coopers making barrels for shipping. And then you had a smaller group of merchants who handled all the trade with Europe and between the colonies. And becoming one of those skilled craftsmen was a long, structured process. A young boy would start out as an apprentice, often living with the master craftsman for years to learn the trade inside and out. After that, he could become a journeyman, which meant he was a certified craftsman who could travel and get paid for his work. The ultimate dream, of course, was to finally become a master and open your very own shop.
But we absolutely cannot understand the colonial economy without confronting a much darker, much more difficult part of the story. We have to talk about the immense labor force that was not free.
Because for millions of enslaved Africans who were forcibly brought to the colonies, the very idea of daily life was something that was dictated by others through violence and coercion. It was not their own. So let's be very clear about this crucial point. Much of the colonial prosperity, the wealth that was being built, was created through the forced labor of enslaved people. They were the engine that powered the economy, especially on those massive southern plantations. They worked grueling hours in brutal conditions with absolutely zero freedom. They created enormous wealth, but received none of the profits or benefits. And you simply cannot have an honest picture of colonial life without understanding this fundamental, tragic truth.
So when we look back at this complex and in many ways very difficult world, what are the big takeaways? What can their daily lives teach us about our own?
If you had to boil it all down, this is it. Colonial life was a daily struggle, defined by relentless, back-breaking work. But just as importantly, it was also defined by a deep, essential reliance on your family and your neighbors just to survive.
This was a world of radical self-sufficiency. You built your house, you made your clothes, you grew your food. But you could not do it all alone. And that's why community was everything. Social life revolved around church, around markets, around fairs, places where people could trade, share news, and simply connect with each other.
And that powerful combination, that incredible grit, that self-reliance, and that deep-seated spirit of community, that is precisely what laid the groundwork for the nation that was to come. The challenges of their daily lives forged the character of a brand new society.
Ultimately, their story is one of building something huge from scratch, with nothing but their hands and the simplest of tools. Which kind of leaves us with a pretty powerful question to think about. With all the incredible tools we have today, what are we going to build?